Um, I never my comedy career was never built off of or predicated off of Dick Gregory, my proximity or attachment to him. A lot of times, people won't know.
Mr. Mark Gregory, welcome to your first one-on-one with Comedy Hype.
What's going on, man? Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, it has been a journey in somewhat to get to this point.
Agreed. Definitely a journey, man.
It's
Life is a
definitely
journey, though, ain't it?
it's definitely a conversation I'm sure that may come up in the future.
Okay.
But I definitely want to dive into your story. What people might recognize as your last name, Gregory, related to Dick Gregory. For those that don't know, you are the nephew of Dick Gregory, the late Dick Gregory. Can you explain kind of like how you're related specifically to Dick Gregory?
Yeah. So, Dick and my dad were brothers, man. So, my dad was Dick Gregory's older brother.
Okay. At what point did you kind of like know that that was like Dick Gregory?
You know, when I was a little kid, I knew my uncle had a little juice because when he would come around, just the treatment that he would receive, the fanfare, the limos, the "Can I have your autograph?" like
He
that
would
type
show
of
up
thing.
in a limo to like a family reunion.
No, 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 no. He
Okay.
wasn't that Hollywood. So when I would see him, it would be he would come to my hometown and speak for like SCLC events, NAACP. You know, so he would get a limo from the airport, swing by our house a couple times. You know, he was going to the airport. He let me and my homeboy get the limo when he went to the airport. So me and my man was riding through the hood in the limo. You know, so
Yeah. In terms of like Dick Gregory, I've always felt that he was more than just a comedian. I think anyone looking at his body of work knew that. Do you think that he was like more than a comedian in terms of was he more political? What? How do you define Dick Gregory?
man, Dick Gregory was multifaceted. You know, at his core, he was a comedian. That is, where he started. But he was also like, I would say like a human rights activist. You know, but this started way before the world knew Dick Gregory. You know, he told me stories about when he was in high school. You know, there was injustices that happened at his high school, Sumner High School in St. Louis, Missouri, that he stood up for. So, you know, once we found out about him, that had been something that he had been doing for a long time.
In terms of like comedy, and in terms of when you have a relative who excels in the craft, and then you decide to follow that path, maybe not them, but you fall in that same path. For those that don't know, you are also a comedian.
Correct.
How did your venture into comedy happen, and was there ever hesitation that you felt, being the fact that Dick Gregory was your uncle?
So how I got into comedy was this, man. I went to college on a track scholarship. I went to University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And honestly, man, I never really intended to do comedy. I grew up in church. Was super cool with my pastor. I thought I was gonna go into full-time ministry, but then, and I was teaching Bible study in college, man. And what happened was I really felt like God telling me start writing jokes. One of my boys I went to high school with, he moved out to LA, started doing comedy, and we would talk all the time. He was like, "Yo, you could do it. You could do it. You funny." And it was kind of like this combination of that, me feeling in my heart that this is the direction that I should go, but then kind of like I wanted to go like the church route. And I was going to do this internship at Auburn with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, right? And that kind of fell through. So the defining moment was, so let me rewind a little bit. My last year in college, I had this moment where I'm done with my eligibility, right? So for athletics to be a part of your life for 13, 14 years, once you get to the end of that, there's like a huge void,
Right.
and I really didn't know what to do. So this is where I go to the library, I go get my Uncle Dick's book.
What made you get the book?
Because I had never read any of his books,
Okay.
and the only book that I knew about was Calluses on My Soul. It was like Black History Month.
Right.
Spike Lee came to speak at our school. I was feeling hella Afrocentric. So I was like,
Right.
least I could do is go get my uncle's book. Right. So I go get Calluses on My Soul, which is the only book that I knew about. So this white girl's at the circulation desk at the library. She's typing, trying to find Calluses on My Soul. Her face turns red. She looks up and was like, "We don't have Calluses on My Soul, but we have." And she turned the computer screen and she pointed to Dick Gregory's autobiography book, Nigger. And I was like, I kind of like paused for a second because it was funny. And I was like, yo, I'm in Mississippi where they like invented the word nigger. And this girl is scared to say it. So I like chuckled. I go get the book. And that moment
Would you
was,
have wanted her to say that?
man, nah, probably
Okay.
not. Probably not.
So she maybe did a cordial thing by just
Definitely, but you could see the irony though, that
got you.
she was afraid to say it. And that was kind of like the first joke that wrote itself for me. And I put a show together on campus. About 40 people came, and that was funny. And so that is how my uncle Dick kind of indirectly, you know, had a huge impact on me doing stand-up comedy.
Right. So at what point do you work yourself up to where now you're ready to start touring with him?
Man, you know what? That was a long time coming because honestly, I really thought that Dick Gregory being my uncle, my path in comedy was going to be a lot easier. I was like, man, I'm about to be lit.
Okay.
So this was 2006. So I didn't start touring with my uncle until 2015. So I was like 9 to 10 years in stand-up comedy, just figuring it out on my own. Just driving around the country. I would go to Chicago a lot. So at this time, I'm living in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, and I would just go to Chicago once a month because the comedy scene there was so strong. My boy let me get a key to his apartment, so I would just go stay in the south suburbs of Chicago and just hit stages and get stronger and get stronger. So by the time I did go on tour with my uncle, like I was strong enough to handle the moment, and I'm glad I did because my uncle's crowds were so wide ranging. So he did an interview on the Breakfast Club right around 2014, 15, and that kind of gave him a resurgence. So you had like the young millennials that were coming to see Dick Gregory
Right.
and the old heads. So there would be times that I would have to do an hour on stage because Dick Gregory comes out of the green room when he wants to. So if I'm supposed to do 30 minutes and you and him are talking in the green room, he don't care about he's supposed to go on. He will finish
Wow.
his
How does
conversation.
the comedy clubs are afraid to approach him? Because that's still business. Like,
When certain people are selling a certain amount of tickets, they get a certain grace. You know what I
gotcha.
mean? So that's really what it was.
Yeah. So one thing about Dick Gregory, he was seen as an elder, a teacher, a
Correct.
very wise man. Talked about a range of topics. Knew a different. I feel like you could probably talk to him about anything. But being around that type of person who was constantly pouring information, what did he specifically pour into you that you carry with today?
The biggest thing that he always told me was what the universal God did for me, he did for me. And what God is going to do for you, he's going to do for you. Just be patient and allow it to happen. So when I was around him, we never talked like the nuances of comedy. It was just life. Like, hey, just enjoy this journey, be focused, and what's going to come to you is going to come.
Now, Dan Gregory, I feel like he did a lot for his lifetime. When you look at certain people's life, they accomplish so much that you can't really mourn their passing in a sense. You can kind of celebrate it because it's like you did. What else can you have done with your life? We would lose him on August 19th in 2017. Do you remember specifically when you found out that your uncle had passed away?
Yeah, I did. I was actually at a restaurant eating dinner and was with one of my friends, and my phone kept buzzing. And I was, I didn't want to be rude and keep checking my phone. So I was like, I'll just get to it later. And maybe by the 15th, 20th buzz, people were saying, hey, man, sorry to hear about your uncle. And at that point, he was in the hospital. So I thought they were just referencing him being in the hospital. And then I got up and called my cousin and was like, hey, is it true that Uncle Dick passed? And he said, yeah. So that's not the way that you want to find out, through social media or through other avenues. So yeah, it was yeah, it's not how you want to find out.
What was your immediate feeling when your cousin confirmed that news?
It was it was difficult, man, because death for me it's been a lot, right? So 2002, my mother passed away, right? And then my dad, 2005, right?
Okay.
Grandmother, 2006. So that's kind of like all your elders are gone. And so my uncle I felt like he was like, I have other uncles, but at the time I felt like that was the last connection that I had to my father. You know, I could ask him questions and things of that nature, man. So when he died, honestly, dude, I really didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't want to deal with that. You know, it was extremely, extremely difficult, man. I didn't get on stage for about a month and a half after that. And yeah, it was a lot, dude.
I can imagine. I mean, what you just laid up is new information to
Yeah.
hear that you suffered through those losses. Um, did the journey in comedy become even more difficult because you said you were already struggling when he was here? To kind of like, you thought you was gonna be lit off the name, and then he transitions. Like, where are you currently right now in this space?
Um, I never my comedy career was never built off of or predicated off of Dick Gregory, my proximity or attachment to him. A lot of times people won't know because I don't mention it. You know, sometimes I may do the joke about, me going to go get his book. But other than that, I won't say anything. People will be like, yo, you related to Dick Gregory? So that's how people will know because of the facial resemblance. But outside of that, I really don't say anything. So for me, man, I started off in comedy clubs. My first comedy club weekend was 3 years in. So I started off in mainstream comedy clubs. And then I've always had a foot in like mainstream clubs, private events, corporate, colleges, urban spots. I mean, I've done a USO tour. I've traveled the world doing stand up comedy, Italy, Germany, entertaining the troops. I just recorded a comedy special called Run With It, which is on Apple TV and Amazon. And that was my, kind of my love letter, my dedication to my Uncle Dick. I remember one of the last serious conversations we had. It was 2017, Nashville, Father's Day weekend. And, my Uncle Dick could talk, man. So my daughter's birthday is the next day. So I was like, I'm going to go back to the hotel, pack my bags, break out, and be home at a decent hour. He was like, nephew, sit down. And we had like a 2-hour conversation, man. He was working on the book, and he said, I see a lot of myself in you. And, you know, God is going to do for you what he did for me. I'm not going to be here much longer. I'm passing the baton to you, right? So my comedy special is entitled Run With It, just because of how eerily similar my life and Dick Gregory's life were. So
Right.
back to the book Nigger, when I open this book up, I'm having this void in my life. What am I gonna do, man? Track and field was like, I thought I was going to the Olympics, and that did not happen. So I open this book up, and I'm in my last year of college, right? And my uncle is in his last year of college. He goes to the military for a couple months and starts doing stand-up comedy. And at this moment in my life, I'm in my last year of college. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I feel like God is telling me to start doing stand-up comedy. My homeboy is telling me to do stand-up comedy. And that was like, it was like the epiphanal moment, like, yo, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that is why I entitled my comedy special "Run With It," because because we've been running our whole life, man. And,
Yeah.
so that's where the title came from.
Got you. I definitely glad you were able to kind of like explain that title. That was definitely something I was interested in, and thinking that the reference was running of the torch, passing of the torch. You guys are both in track, so just seeing that parallel as well with the running analogy. Um, One thing now, present day, your last name is still Gregory. You feel any pressure of keeping that name strong within the comedy world at all at this given like moment in time?
I don't feel pressure at all because I feel like my uncle was proud when he was alive and would be today, you know. I think the pressure comes in when you try to live up to or in somebody's shadows and fill their shoes. Like, let's be honest, man. My uncle was hewn out of a different time. He came out of the civil rights movement. He was born in the 30s. So there's just so many things that he experienced that I've never experienced and will shape who he was. We're two different people, you know. My humor is similar to his, but it's different in some type of ways. So I think being organic to my comedy, I'm doing good, you know. So I definitely know that the Gregory name is living on
Right.
and it's proud, but I've never felt any pressure. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'm doing it my way, and that's it.
In terms of maybe another emotion outside of pressure, is there a sense of, is there a chip on your shoulder that you feel like you have something to prove?
Nah, no, not at all, man. I mean, definitely not a chip on my shoulder because if I was not able to do comedy right now, I'm good. Yo, I haven't had a day job I left my day job in 2014, you know, and have been able to travel literally the world doing stand-up comedy. You see me, drip. But no, seriously though.
Right.
I mean, there has not been any lack in my life, man. I've like been extremely blessed. So I think what happens is comparison is where we lose all sense of joy. If I'm constantly looking at Dick Gregory and say, I got to reach up to, nah, man, I'm not doing that. Mark Gregory, 2021, has been extremely blessed by stand-up comedy. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I was making people laugh in middle school, high school for free. And now I'm getting paid for it to travel, stay in nice hotels, and to be able to express my creativity. Come on, man. How can you have a chip on your shoulder from that?
Cool. Well, Mr. Mark Gregory, that is your first one-on-one with CH. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing this to happen. And most importantly, again, my comedy special, Run With It, is on Apple TV and Amazon. Please go check it out. It is an amazing comedy special. Thank you all.